Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 231 of The Reformed Gamers, a podcast all about theology, video games, and fantasy leagues. I am your host this week, Micah, and joining us this week back again, Mr. Adam Sutherland. Bearded brethren, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm starting to get back in this mix. I think this is second time in the last couple months here.
Well, this is a complete role reversal right here. Usually, or oftentimes I have been, solo with just me and you, but you're co-hosting and I'm kind of the guest. But yeah, it's weird being
passenger seat. I drive the wheel. I drive the car in too many different roles. I'm all right with riding in the passenger seat, riding shotgun.
Dude, I'm all about slowly coaxing you back to the podcast. Like, hey, your schedule's clearing up, right? Let's just go ahead. We'll have 3 people on here, or just go back and just replace me and get you back with Logan.
I'm glad I'm able to do it. It's finding those windows to be able to do it, especially with just kind of where Logan and them are at and preparing, getting ready for hopefully the adoption of this baby. And so, yeah, as much as I'm able to help out and fill in, of course, my heart was never to quit. It's just the realities of life said,
sure,
your priorities in some different places. So,
sure.
But yeah, anytime I get a chance to do this, I'm like, of course, I love it.
Yeah. And of course, as you just said, Logan is kind of just taking a sabbatical from the podcast and from, a lot of the content creation. They are coming down to the wire here with the adoption process. So keep Logan and Camilla in your prayers as they're doing that. I know they would appreciate it. So yeah, Logan, we miss you. And we'll be back. We'll be ready to have you back whenever you're ready. So all right, Adam, let's move right into some news this week. A week ago today, as this goes live to the public feeds, Mr. Video Games himself, Jeff Keighley, announced the nominees for the 2022 Game Awards. And this is Game of the Year. These nominees are A Plague Tale Requiem, Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Stray, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3. So I know there's been some chatter in the Facebook group and Discord, just all in the community. What do you think of these nominees, Adam?
Yeah, I think maybe for the first time in a while, I've at least touched all 6 of the Game of the Year.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I played, I don't know, maybe 10 hours of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I was like, I really liked the first one, really liked the second one. I didn't finish the first one because it got to a grinding part, and I just said, okay, I'm not finished this. But I finished the second one, really enjoyed it. Was excited about the third one, but I don't know if it's just where I'm at right now as a gamer, and I don't know. It didn't grab me. Mm-hmm. I played a little bit of Elden Ring. By a little bit, I played less than 2 hours so that I could refund it on Steam when I bought it for my Steam Deck. And quickly reminded myself why I don't play these type of games.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe one day I'll again buy it on sale for PlayStation 5 or something like that. I was just like, I don't want to spend $60 on this because I know, right. And especially in that format, it wasn't hitting the spot. So I, in some degree, I've touched all of these, loved Stray, loved Horizon Forbidden West. I don't know if I talked about that on the podcast. It was one of those games where I enjoyed it, but it didn't like knock your socks off like the first one did. It was just, it took steps forward. It was still really good. I had a lot of fun, but it didn't really grab me. And then, you talked about this, I think via text. I finished A Plague Tale Requiem recently. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a little bit into what I've been playing. Really, really enjoyed that. And then God of War, I'm playing that right now. I'm only about 5 hours in. So I think it's a great list. If I was the one game that isn't on here that I loved probably the most that isn't on this list is Sifu. That's probably the one where I loved Sifu, man.
Sifu got some love in some other categories. I don't have them pulled up right now, but I know Sifu was nominated for a couple, maybe best action adventure game.
I think I was listening to the Kind of Funny guys today, even they were talking about how it didn't even get nominated for best art direction, which is kind of crazy because just the art direction of that game, when you're walking into different places like the club, the museum at the end. You're like, man, this game looks awesome. And so
it's tough competition. Even just looking at the 6 games that are nominated for Game of the Year and thinking about the art direction in those games, it's like, well, they all have killer art direction.
I would probably, on my personal list, put Sifu above Stray. I enjoy
in art direction or Game of the Year.
Just Game of the Year, even.
Okay,
in art direction, probably. That's just how high I think of Sifu. But I think highly of Stray too. I really enjoyed that game. I mean,
I love Stray.
That much fun.
Yeah, I've sung the praises here on the show. Stray is definitely the outlier. It's the one that's like, oh, okay, and a lot of people I think have some umbrage with it. In my opinion, it's well deserved on the list, but I get that it doesn't strike everyone. So that one, will probably end up last in the voting, if you will. That's ever even revealed, which is not. Real quick prediction: who's winning?
I don't know. I think it's probably God of War. I think it's going to have a more across the board. People loved Elden Ring. How crazy is it to think that we're at a point where Elden Ring may not win Game of the Year? Wild.
It's those 2 games, isn't it? Elden Ring or God of War. I think those are probably the coin flip. I'm leaning probably 60, maybe even 70% Elden Ring. I think it's got it locked up. I think it was the zeitgeist at the beginning of the year. It's sold like hotcakes, almost 17 million copies. Everyone's playing it. It really expanded the Souls genre a little bit. Did a lot of cool things. So I think that one will probably win, though I wouldn't be surprised if Ragnarok took it home either.
No one's probably surprised one way or the other. It's that close.
Okay. Well, with that, let's go ahead and segue right into what have you been playing. So, Adam, take it away. I know you've been playing a couple of these games.
Yeah, it's been good. Like I said, I finished up A Plague Tale Requiem. I finished that like literally the day before that God of War came out. I kept telling my wife, I've got to finish this game because on Thursday we Ragnarok. It's here. And so probably the last 3 nights before that, I really put a good amount of time in. Man, that game, I know you talked about it, you praised it. It is such a good game. It looks great. The story is great. The characters are great. So much good about that game. And I'm not a stealth gamer. Like, I don't play stealth games. I'm not big at those. Like, Dishonored, people always like those. And I was like, Dishonored almost punished you if you didn't play stealth. And so I didn't like that. And even in Requiem, they added enough to it where you could play stealth or you could actually almost be aggressive. And so there were multiple times in the game where I kind of cheated the system where I figured you could just kind of run through. And as long as you got to the door in time, you were good. So I kind of cheesed a couple sections like that.
Sure.
But man, that game, it just took everything about the first one that was really good and made it better. It gets wild and crazy, but it was a really, really, really good game. So I've been playing that. I've been playing God of War, like I said. 5 hours in, that game knows how to start off with a bang. I mean, you're just watching the first hour and a half to 2 hours, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is already just epic. And they know how to do epic scenes. I think I mentioned it in our text group for the Dear Critics that it was being described as an epic, not as epic. Like the type of story, it's like an old, it's not the Odyssey, of course, but it's like those type of just ancient epics where it's this journey, these figures are fighting, and it has been Mimir. The storytelling is great. The graphics, I got to the point where early on you kind of release this creature, and it's just such a cool scene. And
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Just really well done. So I'm really excited to get more time. And I was saying in the pre-show that normally when we're heading to Michigan for Thanksgiving here soon, and normally I don't take any physical like consoles because I've got the Steam Deck, my Switch, and I'm like I can just play something on that. But man, I don't know how I'm going to go 8 days without, especially because I know I have time when I'm in Michigan. We're at my mom's. But once we put the kids in bed, I can hang out downstairs and watch, Blue Chips or some old, like cop rerun show with them. Or I could be sitting upstairs playing, God of War for an hour and a half or so.
Right.
So if we've got the space for it, I'm going to have to try to take it, I think. But we'll see what happens. But then the other thing I've been playing that kind of, it's been weird. It's been having my headspace as much as God of War, is Inscription. And so it's a card-based game. It's weird. I'm kind of in this like, I've been playing more card games when we were at the hospital and our son was being born. I got into Slay the Spire on Game Pass on my phone. I was playing that with the touchscreen, and that's a fun card-based game. Inscription. I just downloaded Marvel Snap. I haven't got into it yet because I'm playing. I download on my phone. The amount of times I've downloaded games onto my phone and not touched them is kind of ridiculous. I do it every time I travel. I'm like, oh, I'm going to play this game on my phone. I just don't game on my phone. So I did it with Marvel Snap. Am I ever actually going to play the game? We will see. But anyways, Inscription, I played it. I got hooked the other night and played it for probably, I don't know, 2.5 hours, maybe close to 3.
Dang.
And you just want to keep trying to get a little bit further. It's kind of like you reset every time you lose. And so you're kind of like going through the first boss, the second boss, and there's little like puzzles and things like that you're trying to figure out to advance the game and picking up strategy. And so just wanting to try a new strategy. And I'm not very good at it, I don't think. I'm getting better. But I'm like, I don't even know if I'm progressing or how I'm progressing. But it is a lot of fun. I mean, that's the setting, the main character, enemy, whatever you're playing against. It's a very like just eerie. They did a great job with the atmosphere. Everything about the atmosphere of the game is just right on. And so I really like, as much as I'm enjoying playing God of War, there's that little piece of me is like, but what if I just pull out the Steam Deck and play Inscription for a little bit? It's that good.
That is really encouraging to hear because I've heard a bunch of good things about Inscription, and I keep every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh, that's not for me. That's not a Micah game. So hearing you play this and enjoy it as much as you are is really encouraging for me to go out and try it, because it just doesn't strike me as a game that I would like. But I know this is maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone a little bit.
I think when I think of card games, okay, I play card games. I like board games, all that stuff. Like I often say to people, I'm a spades guy. I want to sit and think and look at my cards and be strategic about what's my next move going to be. And I was thinking about this game the other day. I'm like, these card games kind of bring that out of me. Mm-hmm. I have to think ahead. I've got to plan ahead. I got to strategize. And some of it's luck of the draw, depending on what cards you get dealt in their order. But I mean, if you've had any fun with card games, again, I'm not like a deck builder person. Like that's just not who I am. But the more I played, again, Slay the Spire, I enjoyed my time with that. The more I've played Inscription, the more I'm like, I can definitely see they're very low key. They're chill. I can, if we're watching a show, I can pause it or whatever at any moment. It plays well in the deck, and I've just kind of enjoyed just kind of figuring out. Yeah, I don't know if there's a story. I don't really. I'm not super concerned about that. I mean, you're trying.
How many hours are deep into it? Are
like
you?
5 or 6 hours in?
Okay.
I think I'm trying to like beat this guy to get out of the cabin. I'm kind of kidnapped, I think is kind of the story. But again, maybe more of it will get revealed. But I've definitely, everybody ran. Was it this year? Did it come out this year or was it last year?
Yeah, no, it came out this year. Yeah.
And so a lot of people really ran and raving about it for a long time. And so I got on sale for like $10 not too long ago.
Okay.
So I had my eye on it. So
excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good time.
3 fantastic games there. I think Inscription is nominated for some Game Awards as well. I'm not sure which categories, but anyway, I'd be shocked if it wasn't. I'll be real quick. I talked a lot about Plague Tale Requiem last week. I got the Platinum Trophy for it. Fantastic game. Moving on. God of War Ragnarok. This game is like ebbed and flowed for me. Like you said, I think every God of War has done this. Literally every one. It has just the best opening, and this game is no different. The first like hour, 2 hours, just buckle up, brother. And then because of that opening, it kind of goes into what I feel like is a little bit of a lull. It's more like, okay, here's the game. Let's start introducing mechanics and teaching the game again and stuff. And then here recently, I think I'm about 10 hours in maybe, and here recently it's picked back up in my opinion. I'm like, okay, here we go. Yeah, this is that 94 meta that I'm seeing, um, it's both kind of like a warm, comfortable blanket and new at the same time, because they do have a lot of new features that I won't get into completely. I don't want to get spoilery at all about this game. They do new things with combat. I'll say that I was like, okay, wasn't expecting that. That's great. There's I've heard praises in reviews that I've seen about the side quests and the optional material, and so far I can 100% back that up. That has all been great. You referenced a creature that you free at one point. That whole section is just fantastic. The writing and all the production and graphics and everything, of course, are right on point. One thought that I had that I will say is that playing this back to back from A Plague Tale Requiem has made me appreciate A Plague Tale Requiem that much more. Because a lot of the kind of just the settings, like the set dressing, like you go into, like there's a table with some cups on it, there's a fireplace, cobblestone, a lot of the same kind of settings in both of these games. So some similarities, some crossover, and then musically there's some crossover too. And I'm sitting there going through God of War. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm playing a Plague Tale right now with the way these strings are going in this little setting I'm walking through. Graphically, it holds up to God of War, and so it's making me think like, wow, Plague Tale really did it up with this style of narrative, kind of over the shoulder third person game.
Yeah, my only gripe so far with it is the menus are a little bit much.
Yes.
Like trying to do like your upgrades and your runes. I'm like, half the time I don't even really know. Again, I'm not that far into it, but I'm like, it's just a little convoluted, and I'm like, okay, am I upgrading something? Am I on a new item? Like, is this an upgrade to the Blades of Chaos, or is this a rune? I'm like, so some of those things have kind of been the most for, I think like the skills and things like that have been fine. The armor and the weapons and like choosing those has probably been my biggest frustration at this point. I'm like, there's just a lot going on there.
I don't disagree. I think God of War 2018 had the same problem. We'll see if they clean it up as I've been going along. It seems like I'm roughly maybe twice as, about 5 extra hours on top of it from your experience, but I've gotten a little bit more used to it, but it is just a lot. It's like there's the handle, and then the attachment, and then so many. It keeps going levels, and then there's different things, and then you got to think about Atreus and all his stuff. It is a lot to think about. I did like
with the skills though; they kind of show you how many times you've been using it. Like that was something I just noticed last night. So because of that, I began emphasizing that, and that made the combat even better. Because I'm like, I'm not utilizing a couple of the frost things for the axe.
Yes.
And it made my combat like I was better in combat. Sometimes I would die because I would be overemphasizing it. But like using some of the different skills, it just made the combat even better. And if I didn't see that, like, oh, hey, you're not really using this, I would have just stuck to button mashing to some degree, but I can be a little bit more strategic, which has been nice. And you upgrade those and they get better. And so it's definitely, 100%. That's been something that's been kind of cool. I don't remember if they did that last time, but I'm like, they are saying I should be using this. And so depending on the enemy type, I emphasize, okay, I'm just going to, all these little bitty guys that are creatures that are running around, I'm just going to spam certain attacks to build those up.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll say about it is you just forget how good the combat is and how smooth it feels, and how, like you just said, it encourages you to mix it up and to vary your strategies, or else you're going to kind of get, you're going to get killed. I'm playing on the normal difficulty, and I've died several times. It's, there's I think like 5 difficulties, so you can really tailor it to how you want, how hard you want it. But man, this combat is just so good. It's so like the animations mixed with the quick responses. It's like the best of both worlds. And it just feels great to control as always. Throwing the Leviathan axe, whipping it back to you feels just as good as always. So yeah, I don't have a ton to report on it, and I'm sure we'll do some sort of spoiler episode or whatever, like a full length episode on Ragnarok. I would assume once Logan's played it, and yeah. So
just to throw a little, since he's not here, Logan kind of went on his little rant the other day when he was sick in our text group. He kind of throws some low key shade, and everybody kind of let it go. He's talking about Elden Ring and God of War. He's like, if you want a great story but light combat, go with God of War 2. And I wanted to be like, come again, Big Fun? Like, if you want convoluted but tight and nuanced combat, go with Elden Ring. And I'm like, okay, it's not Elden Ring. It's not you have to be so strategic with every swing of your weapon or your guy's going to get tired and you're going to get destroyed. Sure, it's not that, but to call it combat light or light combat, I'm like, I don't know if I'd call that either.
Dude, and I didn't play it on hard. Go play that Queen Valkyrie in God of War 1 and tell me that's combat light and get back to me. Okay, I'll wait. But anyway, yeah, so that's God of War. That's obviously what we've been playing. So yeah, let's move on then to the main topic. And I don't know what Logan's going to name this episode, so I'm not sure what you're seeing, but we're going to talk about something that has been maybe a little bit trending if you pay attention to certain channels in the gaming world. Kind of funny, easy allies. It's kind of picking up more and more steam, but that is this concept of fantasy sports mixed with video games, and more specifically, we're talking about this website called FantasyCritic.game, and this website is a hub for people to come together and create leagues based around review scores for video games. And so, Adam, the way it works, as you know, we're going to dive into a lot of it here in just a little bit, but basically, at the beginning of the year, it's a year-long event. You draft a handful of games, depending on how large your league is, that will come out in that given year. And you want to obviously draft games that are going to have a high review score, a high meta score, based on that they use OpenCritic.com as their unit of measure. If they use Metacritic, it gets too much into on Xbox it reviewed this and PlayStation it reviewed that. They don't deal with all that. They just use OpenCritic and you get the one score. And you get points based on how they do. So, Adam, I'm gonna stop talking here. Sort of toss it over to you. Sort of explain to listeners who don't know anything about Fantasy Critic, kind of the scoring, the 70 benchmark, all that kind of stuff, and a little bit about the basics of how Fantasy Critic works.
Yeah. So you kind of set up again. I've done fantasy football since I was a wee little lad. I mean, I think I probably did my first fantasy football league when I was sophomore, junior in high school. So I mean, I've been involved in fantasy sports for more than half of my life at this point. Mm-hmm. And I love those. And so I remember when you asked me the first time if I wanted to join, I'm like, man, I don't know if I got time for that. And then this year I'm like, you know what? Sure, I'll figure out a way to get involved. And it's been just, first of all, a ton of fun. So you kind of do the same thing. You get your draft order, and it's called a snake style draft. So you go 1 to 10, then 10 to 1, then 1 to 10, then 10 to 1. And so you're drafting, and the way that you get points on fantasy sports, you get points depending on the performance, like touchdowns, if it's basketball, points they score, rebounds, all that. So in video games, you can't really judge it by that. So they had to kind of set a median. So they say, okay, say an average game is a 70. That's a good game. It's solid. Any point above that, I think 70 to 90 is like 1 point. I think 90, and then every point above 90 is 2 points.
Correct.
And then the negatives, I don't know exactly where they hit that threshold, but it's a little bit
prorated, so it doesn't completely ruin your lineup. But essentially, let's say, for example, a game comes out and its OpenCritic score is 76. That'll get you 6 points. It's 6 over 70. If it's a 68, it gives you minus 2 points. So that's sort of kind of where we're talking about with that 70 being the baseline or the par, if you will.
Yeah. And so you're trying to draft a roster that's getting you the most points above 60. So we call it the Alex Castellano rule, where you aim for 80s and anything below that is a disappointment basically in our league. Alex has run the league almost the last couple of years. So we kind of joke with him about that, but he's drafted a lot of games that are over 80. And if you can do that over, I mean, if you hit an 80 plus on 7 or 8 of your games, you're most likely going to be at the top of the league. I mean, a good score is anything really above a 75 to 80. Anything above 100 is really, really good. You're likely going to be in the top 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's hard. I mean, anything can tear a score down. It's funny when a game doesn't get a score that someone thinks that it should. Just the way that we get to laugh with each other, laugh at each other.
Yeah.
Everybody's mad at some random, like I'm mad at PC Magazine right now because they trashed Somerville.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of get some of those and you're like, who are these outliers? But so that's how you get the scoring going. Really off of that. So I don't know what you want to build off of.
Yeah,
that.
I was just thinking, I got a little bit ahead of myself at the beginning that, one reason, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you've probably heard Logan and I or Adam or, even, Nate and Josh over at the Backlog Breakdown are in the league with us. I mean, you've heard us talk about quote unquote the league, or the Dear Critics is what we call it. And this is just a league. Whenever I found out about Fantasy Critic, I found out about it through the Easy Allies podcast about 4 years ago. This is our 4th year doing it. I was like, I would like to start a league in the Reformed Gamers. And so I sent out a call in the Facebook group, and I got very few responses. I got Alex Castellanos, I got Eddie Taylor, I got Luke Strain, and Jeff Wofford all responded. It was the 5 of us started this league. And then it just sort of grew and extrapolated out from there. And, we got you roped in, we got Logan roped in. Like I said, Nate and Josh over at the Beatdown. And we're all having a blast, man. I think there's 11 of us total. And it's just a lot of fun. So the reason I'm bringing it up is because, why don't we open this up to the rest of the community? And so what we're announcing today, and we sort of alluded at it in previous episodes, and Logan on his patch notes, if you're a patron, is that in 2023, we are going to have a listener league for whoever wants to join. And who's going to be part of this league? Adam, you're going to be in the league, right? Logan's going to be in the league. Skinner's going to be in the league, our dear editor, and I'm going to be in the league. So the 4 of us, we're going to create a league with whoever wants to join. And I'm going to give some information at the end of this episode about how you can get in on this year-long league starting in 2023 that we're going to do. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but I wanted to set up and talk about why we love it so much. Adam, so let me kick this over to you here. What is it that kind of draws you to fantasy leagues to begin with? You started about fantasy sports, and then kind of what is it that makes Fantasy Critic unique and special in its own way?
Well, one of the good and bad things about fantasy sports in general is it makes every game worth it. Like the NFL is as big as it is, not because football is a great sport. It's because fantasy football is one of probably the biggest industries in the U.S. right now. I mean, the amount of money that is poured into fantasy sports that affects the NFL, that affects so many different things. I mean, the NFL wouldn't be as big as it is if it wasn't for fantasy sports. It's just, and it makes every game matter. I will watch random teams play because I've got players on that fantasy, on those teams that will benefit my team. So you apply that to a league like the Dear Critics and fantasy video games, it makes games that I wouldn't normally care about matter. Like there's a ton of games that we're talking about, that we're tracking. We're watching the indie showcases, we're watching PlayStation Showcase, Nintendo Directs, all of these things. And you're constantly looking at every game through the lens of, would this be a game that I would want to give a roster spot to? How good do I think it's going to score? So it keeps you really tuned into that level of news, of release schedules. And so it just makes games across the board more interesting. I'm not kind of in my corner of the world just playing the games that I want to play. And really since I've started doing the podcast, it's, I listen to gaming podcasts. I'm like the hardcore of the hardcore, not to no, we're not patting anybody's back. If I'm on a podcast, reality is you're hardcore of the hardcore. You don't do a podcast if you're not. And so I'm listening to those things. So I was already tuned in, but it's almost taking it to that next level of thinking strategically. Like the first year I did the draft, didn't know a ton about it. And one of my big mistakes is I knew of Psychonauts. I never played Psychonauts. I didn't really know the trailers. And I'm like, this game's been taking forever, yada, yada, yada. I didn't know even the heritage of the first game of Rhombus of Ruin. And so I'm like, I'm going to counterpick that. We haven't really talked about counterpicks yet. But basically, it's where everyone drafts their teams, the mountlet. So like 6 teams at the beginning, and you can add teams later. But of the games that are drafted, you get to pick a game from someone else's roster that you think is actually going to score good. You want a game that's going to be below 70. So my first year, I drafted Psychonauts 2 just out of, honestly, I was naive. I didn't know enough about it. I only knew the few negative things about it, and it bit me in the butt. It was like a 92 on Metacritic or something. So I lost 22 points because the game was really good. So it's made me even be more strategic and more thoughtful about even those games. I can't just always go off of what I think I know. I need to do a little bit of more research. So I'm looking up, like, if it's a second game or a third game, I'm going back and looking, well, how did the first game score? How did the developers' other games, how did those score? So it's one of it's got me even more in the world. Probably I didn't need to be more in the world, honestly. I'm probably in it enough. But it's kind of, it's been a lot of fun. And I know you made a note about this kind of on something you want to share, but the camaraderie piece. When I stepped away from the podcast, I lost some of that, honestly. Me and Logan were texting a lot more when I was on the podcast. It's just natural that we would.
Right.
And so I'm not as involved in the Facebook group. I don't do Discord. It's kind of a running joke at this point with me. So I had kind of lost some of that, but the messaging group that we're in has kind of helped. It's my outlet now to some degree, to where I can talk about whatever gaming stuff that I want to when I'm able, when I've got the time. And it's really got me even closer to some of those people. I knew of Eddie. I knew of Amanda. I've known Luke a little bit more. Alex, I knew some, but some of these people we just know more because we've been in the group. And so that camaraderie
100%.
piece is, we talk trash, we laugh, we share good things. It's kind of all of the things, but it's really become a fun just group to kind of laugh with, laugh at, enjoy, how we give Jeff sometimes a hard time. Jeff's had some rough drafts the last couple of years. But Jeff is in there, man. He's having a good time. He just had a big game, I think, released this week. So good for him.
Yeah, he had Pentiment, which is doing fantastic. Another Game Pass game.
It's just fun. It kind of brings another level to yearly releases. That it's. I mean, again, like I said, with card games, I like the strategy. I like thinking through critically. Okay, I'm drafting some games that I don't even know much about, but maybe they're other games developed. I think that's where Alex really crushes it. Alex knows the random games that are like Japanese games that are being released.
Alex does a great job, I think, of getting out of his box and getting out of his purview of what he likes, I think. I mean, he drafts games that he likes, of course. I think we all do that. That's kind of natural, and that's part of what's fun about it. But one thing that I love about fantasy critics especially is, you sort of touched on it, you just learn about so many other games. And it's not just games. It's like, these are games that some human thinks is going to be excellent. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, well, why do you think that? I never even heard of this. Why do you think this is going to be good? And you learn, like, oh, okay, you learn about the new, Inscription, or whatever the case, that you didn't know about, Chicory, or these random games that are like, wait, this scored a 92 on OpenCritic. What is this game? That kind of thing.
When Neon White hit a 92, we're all like, what in the world is this game that blew up out of nowhere? And some, like you said in the draft, people are drafting games. Like, you've got your sleepers. Like, we'll talk about later about some big games for next year. We've all got our sleepers that people are going to reveal games to me that I would have never known about, and I probably would have never played.
Right.
And now I might do that because someone else said, hey, this game could be good.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, the camaraderie goes without saying. If you're just in general, if you're in like a fantasy sports league or any sort of fantasy league, and your camaraderie is not there, get out of that league. You need to get in a good league with some good camaraderie, get some good buds together, and get you a good league going. But anyway, yeah, we have a ton of fun over in the Dear Critics, and yeah, that's what I want to bring to the rest of the community. Anyone that's interested, we might have 3 people. I don't know. We might have 50 people knocking at the doors. But either way, I want to kind of just spread the word, the good word of Fantasy Critic. It's just a lot of fun. So
now, one difference is, I saw this in your notes, like if you've done fantasy sports in other areas, often that's a head-to-head format.
Right.
Where I'm playing against your team. This is like, if you know of baseball, they use a rotisserie scoring. It's kind of like rotisserie. It's not really rotisserie, but it's just your whole team against the rest of the league. So it's not, this week I'm playing against Micah. It's like all year I'm playing against the whole league.
And it's a marathon.
Whoever has the best score wins.
It's a marathon. It's all year. So if you say like, well, all the games that I drafted, they're not coming out until October or later, that's fine. You don't have to get your points, and
as long as they hit by December.
As long as they hit by the time, the calendar hits.
Somerville. December is the year of the Bearded Brethren, and that's my team's name. Now, they're not going to hit in the way that I need them to hit, but it's kind of been cool. It keeps you in it. Like, I've joked about the last multiple Nintendo Directs, like, oh, Sports Story is going to come out. And then it actually happened, and it's like all of a sudden the text group blows up.
Well, you're already talking about it, Adam. You're already talking about it. Let's go ahead and dive in just a little bit, just to give the listeners a little bit of a taste of sort of what we're doing. So we're literally kind of pulling up our rosters that we have in the Dear Critics for this year right now. So Adam, you drafted looks like Horizon Forbidden West as your first game. Was this the third overall pick that you had?
So I was the number 3 pick. So you've got your draft order. So I'm thinking, of course, again, you have to think about what is actually going to come out. You can't be like, oh, I want Breath of the Wild.
Extremely important.
Yeah, who doesn't want Breath of the Wild? It's going to score amazing. But if it doesn't come out, you don't get, in fantasy football, you can drop and pick up as many games as you want. In Fantasy Critic, you usually get maybe 2 or 3 drops a year. So if I'm drafting a bunch of games that don't come out, there's going to be some zeros there if I'm out of drops. And you see that often, guys running out of drops. So you're thinking both, is this realistically going to come out? And then is it going to score well? So yeah, my first pick was Horizon. It was pretty much guaranteed. We may have even had a date by then. So a lot of times you're drafting games that are on windows. You're like, oh, it's summer or it's fall. And you're like, okay, as long as it actually hits that window, I'm all right. I don't need the exact dates. Yeah. So I picked up that. Stray was on my roster the year before. Man, if it would have came out, I would have easily got second place. But so I redrafted that. Salt and Sacrifice, if you knew Salt and Sanctuary, I was a big fan of that game. It scored okay.
It got you 75
points. One that I just mentioned was my 4th overall pick was Sports Story. If you played Golf Story, you know enough about it.
Now, Adam, I got to call this one out. You drafted Forspoken, which got delayed into 2023. Are you going to think about that game for 2023, or let it pass on now that we've seen more of it?
I don't think I would. We'll talk about keepers and some of the logistics of these things later. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would keep it. I think it's going to end up scoring all right, but is it worth my number 1 overall pick? I don't know if I would say that. There's probably better games depending on where I'm at. So again, some other games I like. So you draft like 5 or 6, and then you're just picking up random games.
That's what I was about to say.
Some random games I picked up was like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet when that came out, and you bid on them. So you get $100, and you could bid $95 if you wanted. Well, then you only got $5 for the rest of the year. And so you're kind of playing this cat and mouse game of how much is Micah going to bid on this? How much is Logan going to bid? Like Logan bid like $76 on Mario Strikers. That's bonkers. He got it, and then it scored okay. But you kind of are playing this like cat and mouse game of what's enough. I want to be $1 over the next highest bid. Yep. I don't want to be $25. So you're kind of playing that cat and mouse game. You're, at E3, you're listening to what are some of the other previews people like. A lot. I listened to Kind of Funny. They were really big on Escape Academy. Everybody at E3 was talking about that. And no one else bid on that. I think I got it for $1. And that one was a solid 10 points. I had some duds like Shadow Warrior 3, the other ones that were like mid to upper 70s. I thought I might get those. It was lower 70s.
Yeah, Somerville.
So yeah, but then like one of the other ones that I dropped, the 2 games that I dropped were, I had Mario Kart 9. So like if they would have done an actual game and not this weird DLC release, I would have been sitting real nice. But because they went about it the way they went about it,
yeah, but you're doing really respectable in the league. So with that roster, listeners, he's got Adam's 4th in the league right now, I think. Is that, or 4th or 5th, something like that?
So counter picks. I am currently the only one who has counterpicked a game that has got points.
Mm-hmm.
And so that last year I lost a lot of points. So that's my badge of honor this year is I picked up, what was it?
Saints Row.
I'm like, this game ain't going to be good.
Yeah, you got a 63.
It wasn't very good. So that helped. So solid season. I can't remember the other game that I dropped. It was It wasn't a big game. It was just a game we knew wasn't releasing.
Yeah, I wish I had more games I could drop. Like you said, there's sort of that risk reward. You got to gamble a little bit as far as like, okay, well, I want to get this really awesome game, but is it going to come out in 2022 or whatever? A good example for 2023 would be Marvel Spider-Man 2. Sony said this coming out in 2023, but we have no idea. Like that could get delayed easily, kind of thing. So, like it's going to score well if it hits, but is it going to hit? And so you can only have so many drops, and so you kind of have to be cautious with swinging for the fences all the time, and think like, okay, well, let me get something that I know is going to come out this year. So that was my problem this year, Adam. I drafted Tears of the Kingdom, which didn't come out this year. I drafted Horizon Call of the Mountain, thinking that the VR would come out by December, and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink got delayed. Planet of Lana got delayed. My roster is riddled with delays. So like this is my plight. It's like, yeah, I had Plague Tale Requiem, I had Pokemon Arceus, I had The Quarry, I had some solid games here and there. But it was not nearly enough when you look at how many games that got delayed out of 2022 for my roster. And that was just devastating. You can't have that. So just that's like a brief glimpse of kind of, the way we construct our rosters, the way we think about it. And yeah, so
before we move on real quick, one of my favorite.
Sure.
You love the ones like you would think, oh, whoever got Elden Ring's probably in a good spot. You look at someone like Marshall. Marshall dropped Elden Ring. It got a 95. That's 31 points.
Yeah.
Huge. You're like, but then he swung hard and missed on Babylon's Fall, which was a 43. So as good as Elden Ring was, they're lucky he's to a degree they prorate that because that is what negative 27 points. That really could have been a 4-point game.
Babylon's Fall was the inverse Elden Ring this year.
So
truly.
For him to have both, it really canceled those out. So and he had some other good games too, and same with like Nate. Nate's had some really good. He has God of War. He had Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, AI, the Somnium Files, but then he's had a couple negatives, and those just really. We joke about the 80, but if you can be around an 80 consistently, you're gonna be in it because that means a couple above. Hopefully, you have multiples that are 15, 16, 17, and then maybe have a couple that are 5, 6, 7, 8s. But if you're right around that 10-point average, you're going to be in a good spot. It's just as much as you want the big swings with the big points, man, if you guess wrong, it can be brutal.
Yeah, that's great advice. And the other piece is something I already touched on is you got to think outside of your little box and your genres that you like, and your publishers that you like, all that kind of stuff. If you're a big Nintendo guy, get that out of your brain. You can't be drafting all Nintendo games. So that kind of thing. You gotta think outside that. But you're like, oh, okay, well, there's whole other genres that you probably don't play or really consider games in that genre. You gotta open up your eyes a little bit and look and see like, okay, well, I can see where this is going to get like maybe an 82, 83, something like that. So maybe I'll pick this game up, even though I want this other game better because it's more up my alley. So yeah. Adam, I think we're going to skip the sort of the review score discussion. I don't want to dive into all that. That's kind of too big of a conversation. So, dear listeners, without further ado, here we go. We're just going to kind of break down sort of the setup of how we're going to do what we're calling the Dear Listeners League for 2023. So there again, we're putting a call out right now. As soon as you hear this, it is going to be a first come, first serve basis to reach out to me, not Logan, not Adam. Reach out to me.
He is the captain now.
I'll be the commissioner of the league. And yeah, here's how it's going to be. We're going to have, depending on the reaction and depending, I know you're saying like, well, what about patrons? They get to hear it first. If we have enough reactions from patrons and the public, we'll make 2 different leagues. We'll work it out. But we're going to have a 14-team league. Like I said, Logan, Adam, Skinner, and myself are going to be the first 4 members. We're looking for 10 more members. If we don't hit 10, that's fine. We're going to keep going. We're going to make the league. If we get 25, we'll entertain making a couple of leagues. But
there's a way that you can do that. I mean, you can be in a league without us. Like we may have
absolutely.
Dear listeners, but if we get like, hey, we've got 15 other people that want to be in a league, we'll connect you guys all together, pick a commissioner 100%. And just let you run. It's just, of course, because we'll be talking about it on the podcast, there might be a level of, well, it might be a little bit more fun, but
yeah, absolutely.
I can't be in 15 fantasy football leagues and 15 Dear Critic leagues. My wife will.
But really, speaking of obligations and kind of things that you need to be like commitments that you have for the league, is there's really only one true commitment. Like we said, this is a year-long thing, so it covers all of 2023 from January 1 to December 31st. And really, you only need to be available for the draft, which will take place in either late December or early January. Whenever we get everyone together, we'll get a thread going somewhere on Discord or on Facebook or something. And we'll set a draft date that fits with everyone's schedule, and we'll go from there. So let me see here. I talked about we might open it up to patrons if we have more demand. Okay, so we're going to have a 14-team league. We'll probably be rostering 10 total games. We'll probably draft 5 and pick up 5 throughout the year. So, when E3 quote unquote rolls around or Nintendo does a Nintendo Direct and it's randomly shadow drop a game, it's like, oh, let me go grab that or whatever. Those are what those pickup spots are for. That might change, but we'll probably roster 10 games. So when it comes to the list of games that you can draft, you can't draft any old game. You can't draft ports. You can't draft remakes. You can't draft games that have been released in Japan but haven't come out in the US, all these kinds of things. If you want kind of a full set of rules and explanations, you can head over to fantasycritic.game right now and just check it out. You can go ahead and make an account as well if you want, if you're anticipating joining the league. But you can take a look at the tag system that they have over there. It's pretty well thought out. A guy named Steve Fallon created the whole website. So shout out to him. He's done a really great job with it. And so, yeah, that's really it. All I'm going to say, like I said, first come, first serve. As soon as you hear this, contact me, reach out to me, hit me up on Twitter at Doug's Vest. I'm in the Reform Gamers Facebook group. You can find me there. You can private message me on that. You can private message me on Discord at Doug's Vest, DOUGSVEST. So yeah, any of those outlets, however to get in touch with me, just reach out to me and say, hey, I want to join the Listener League, and we'll kind of get a group together and we'll get it rolling. Adam, is there anything that I missed in any of that?
No, I think that's and again, each league is a little bit specific, so you can go to the website and learn a little bit more. But like we have specific tags and things like that we don't allow, like Micah said, so it won't give you the exact picture, but it'll give you a good idea. And you can look at, you can search our league, you can search.
Our league is public if you want to. Yeah.
You can probably put a link in the show notes to our league so you can kind of look and see how our teams are doing. Then there's all kinds of different public leagues for bigger podcasts that you can check out their stuff too.
Yeah, so let's hear from you, dear listeners. Let's start the inaugural Dear Listeners League off the right way. And quick note to anyone in the Dear Critics, this league is not open to you. I'm sorry, you're already in a league. So yeah, no one from the Dear Critics, please. Now, Adam, we have a lot of games to look forward to in 2023. Now, we've been talking in the Dear Critics, especially, we're so excited to start drafting next year because we know there's so many good games coming out. We just talked about how, like, Tears of the Kingdom, all these games got delayed out of 2022, plus the games that are just slated for 2023 anyway. I mean, so we're looking at things like Hollow Knight, Silksong, Starfield, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, perhaps, Final Fantasy 16. We talked about Spider-Man 2, Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, The Wolf Among Us 2, Pikmin 4, Alan Wake 2, Hellblade, Senua's Saga. I mean, where do you want to go? Like, what games are you looking forward to, I guess? Or what games? I'm not trying to give away strategy here.
Sure.
But what's some sleepers you see for 2023? What are you seeing here?
Well, a game that will be probably one of the most interesting games that who knows how it will score. You didn't even have it in yours, but Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah.
Everything about the game, other than the outside drama, people seem to be talking very highly about it. It looks like it's like a Harry Potter fan's dream game. You get enter a different school. I mean, you get to I'm blanking for whatever. I'm embarrassing myself as a Harry Potter fan, but whatever class or whatever you're in your group, and then just the game looks really well. The thing that could hurt that is the political correctness of our culture, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to throw out some words that people throw out, but because people don't like J.K. Rowling, that score will be very interesting. That goes, I mean, we're not talking about review scores, but that game could be really, really good. And all it takes is a handful, 10 reviewers to say, we're going to try to tank this game. And our culture does that. I mean, we know cancel culture.
Yep.
So that is a game that, as excited as I am, I don't know if I'm touching it, just because it could be really good or it could be really bad, even though it's really good. I think the game's going to be solid, but I don't know if the score is going to be solid because of that. So that's one game that I've got my eye on that I think will be an interesting pick going into next year.
Yeah, for sure. I think, touching on, thinking about Spider-Man 2, that's what these sort of games that are like, well, I just don't know if this is actually going to come out this year or not. One that I'm looking forward to is Hellblade: Senua's Saga. I think they're really taking their time with this one. I don't know if it's going to release in 2023. They haven't said anything.
It has to.
But I bet
it has to. They showed too much of that game. They showed gameplay.
Well, and it's the game that they announced the Xbox Series X on. Remember in the Game Awards like 3 or 4 years ago or whatever. So you would think so. I think this game, Microsoft is trying to build this game up and get it ready production-wise on a level to really showcase visually just a true spectacle. I think Microsoft's aim, and is it Ninja Theory is the developer, their aim is this game is going to be the best looking game you've ever seen. I think that's their goal. And not that that's like the end all be all, but I think it's going to wow a lot of people. If it has the, there was a specific mechanic about the original Hellblade that was very kind of unique and original. I don't know how they're going to kind of move forward with that sort of stuff. But, if they can put it all together, I think Hellblade: Senua's Saga is going to be an outstanding game for 2023 that I think some people have just kind of forgotten about because we haven't heard anything from it in a while.
Here's the thing. Your first couple rounds of the draft, it's hard to sneak anything in because you got your, Tears of the Kingdom. If you're number one pick and you don't take that game, I don't know. Again, someone might say maybe Hollow Knight's kind of been a running, Silksong's kind of been a running joke / serious thing in our group. Like when that game comes out, it's going to crush because it will probably do really good. But does it do better than Tears of the Kingdom? Nate would say yes. I mean, that's kind of been the conversation. Nate acts like it's going to be 100. But Tears of the Kingdom, I mean, that would probably be my number one pick. Starfield's probably going to review really good just because people are drinking that Kool-Aid.
Starfield has to be good, doesn't it?
I mean, I've never got into the Bethesda large open world games for whatever reason. I just never have. So I couldn't tell you. I mean, it could be really good. It could also be really janky. And will that matter? Elden Ring was janky and people still gave it 10s out of 10s, right, Micah?
Yeah, they did.
That was a point you often made. But another game I'm excited, like Star Wars Jedi Survivor, it should come out next year. It should.
Oh, it's got like an early 2023 date, I
Oh,
think.
it already has a release date. I couldn't remember.
Or a release. It's early. It's an early window. I don't know if there's an exact
That
date,
one,
but
I mean,
I think March
I
maybe.
expect a really good score out of that. If The Wolf Among Us 2 comes out next year, that is sweet. That first game was a ton of fun. Everybody talks about The Walking Dead. The Wolf Among Us is better than any of the Walking Dead Telltale games. It was so good. So that would be another one that's like, can they hit that sweet spot again? I don't know. But man, the first one was great. So there's a lot of really good options. I mean, Final Fantasy VII. If we, is Rebirth what the second part 2 is, or
correct?
Like, yes, give me more of that, please.
Yeah.
So there's definitely, again, we've got our sleepers, we've got some of those other things that we're looking forward to, but there's definitely a lot of really good games.
Yeah, the first two rounds of the draft are going to be insane. You know, for example, if you have, let's say you're the last pick. Let's say that you're in a 12-team league and you're the last pick. You just start seeing all these fantastic games go off the list that you're not going to get: Zelda, Hollow Knight, Starfield, Final Fantasy, Star Wars, Hellblade, and you're like, what game am I going to get? Like, there's still so many good ones out there. But that's just kind of how fantasy sports work. You know, in any sort of draft, you're like, you know, if you're the number one pick, and again, like Adam said, it's a snake draft, so you get the one pick and you have to wait 24 spots if it's a 12-man league to come back to you. That's a lot of games that are off the board before you get your second game overall.
Well, the great thing is about fantasy is you don't have to have the big AAA game to get a good score.
Yes.
Most of the big scores from this year, I mean, you got God of War, of course, you've got Elden Ring, but when you think of Neon White, Intimate, this Norco game that none of us even drafted. There's another game on there called Frosted. Games that are at the top, I'm like, these are super small indie games. You can get those indie darlings. I mean, you think of what was the one, Death's Door last year? That was one that I was like, I should have picked it up. And Amanda got it for like $2 when I was trying for like nothing or something like that. Or she got the week before I tried. You got to listen specifically around like E3. That is the strategy. I'm giving you guys some hints. E3 previews. What are all of the influencers saying is the game? That's how I got Escape Academy. That's how some of these other games come out. What are the games that people are talking about saying this is going to be good, or they think it's going to be good? It's playing good already, and you try to get those ones because that's how you, like, I think, what was my roster? Like a couple of my proudest picks aren't my draft picks, honestly.
Yeah.
My proudest picks are the ones that I picked up later that score good. Like Blossom Tale 2. I got 80 out of that. That was my second to last game I picked up. Escape Academy, I think, was one of my other last games.
Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, so those are the ones that I'm proud of. It's not like, oh, you picked Horizon Forbidden West. Well, duh. Exactly.
Right.
You expect that one. When you get the game that no one's either talking about or you just outbid someone and then it crushes, that's the one that you're like, all right.
Yes.
Like that feels good. Like I stole that one and it scores well. So those are the ones that you really are going to make your moves in the league.
Yeah. It's always fun to just, like you said, that camaraderie when a game comes out and it's like you're expecting an 80, 85 and it's like, 71 is like everyone just is like, oh man, just start ragging on them and stuff. It's just a lot of fun and exciting to see, you know, how these games perform. It's if you are at all interested in review scores for video games, how these games perform, just kind of prognosticating in general about the industry, I invite you to come on in, guys. Join the league. Don't be shy. We're gonna have an awesome time. It's gonna be welcoming. We're gonna explain any questions that you have. So absolutely, like I said, reach out to me, Twitter, Facebook, Discord. It doesn't matter. Just get in touch with me and say, hey, I want to join the Listener League for 2023, and we'll get you hooked up, man. All right, Adam, we're wrapping up here in episode 231, and of course, it's the final episode of the month, so we have to do patron thank yous. So, Adam, you cool with taking red if I take blue?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Thank you, patrons. Aaron L. White, Alex Castellanos, Boulder, Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, David Henderson, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Jake Walker, Jeff Jackson Jr., Jimmy Changa, John Hannon, Jonathan Harrison, Josh Broccolo, Joshua the Super Llama Johnson, Clay Brandon, Kokorodaki, Luke Strain, Matt Edwards.
Matt White Chocolate McDougal, Matt Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Mr. Hendrick himself, Micah, Michael Toller, Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever, Porcho, Richard Marroquin, Ryan 1701E, Sam White, Savin Pena, Sojourner, Third Strongest Mole, Tim Syriac, Travis, Vincent Yu, Wesley Ray, Yuku Ali, and Zachary Nelson.
Thank you, dear patrons. Of course, dear patrons, listeners, you can be a patron just like all these things we just said. For as little as $1 a month gets you early and uncut access to the episodes. I had to think how Logan always says it. Okay, Adam, we can't get out of here without doing some recos. So go ahead and toss it on the dear listeners. What are you recommending for this episode?
It kind of slipped my mind. I didn't really think too much about it. So, I mean, I'm just thinking of some of the things that we've been into recently as a family. We've been watching a lot of Survivor. It's been a go-to. Go back and watch some of those old seasons on Hulu if you got that. It's a good time. We're finally finishing up Andor. Did you watch Andor?
No, not yet. It's on the list. I want to watch it.
Man, that's been really good. It's kind of surprising how good that's been.
Excellent.
And then, I mean, I think I've talked about some of these games that I've been trying out. One recommendation, you were talking about this earlier, I think is good about Black Friday. Go on Twitter. Again, pardon my language, earmuffs if you got little ones. The handle is Cheap Ass Gamer. He has a spreadsheet that he does every year. Usually it's gaming deals plus. Then he's got like all the random items that are in all of the catalogs. That is a must around the holiday season. Because you're like, I want to get this game. He's going to tell you the game and how much it is at all of the places, so you know you're getting the best price. So there's your King of Thrift recommendation of the year.
Yeah, I can back up that recommendation for CAG for short. Good stuff over there. My recommendation is a YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is just Kyle Bossman. The show that he does on this channel is Delayed Input. Kyle is the ex Easy Allies host. He hosted the podcast over there for Easy Allies. Dude is funny as all get out. They're language warning. He's not foul, but he will just drop a bomb from time to time. So just warning out there, but these videos are so funny. They're so clever. He's got a new topic every week. I think they come out every week on Fridays. This week is about Marvel Snap. He's saying he needs to quit the game and he can't. It's really great. So go check out Delayed Input from Kyle Bossman, Bosman, over on YouTube. Adam, handsome bearded man, thank you for hopping on episode 231 and just, always just being awesome, basically.
Well, I try my best. There are many times that I fail and need God's grace and forgiveness. But yeah, it's a joy to get to be back on the podcast, to be walking alongside. Again, the podcast is just a reason to hang out with you, Logan, the listeners. The fantasy leagues are just reasons to get, people, like-minded people together, especially as believers together, talk video games, hang out. As much as we like talking video games, I remember when, this isn't a spoiler, Nate talks about it on his podcast and on his Twitter, like when Nate was talking about their adoption, Logan talking about theirs. Again, we get as hype about those moments as we do video games. So it's just cool getting to, again, social media is the worst, so let's not get it twisted. It is. But there are good areas of it, and this is one of them. For sure. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. All right, guys. Well, that will be all for this episode. And as Logan likes to say, be a deer. Keep it locked here. We'll see you in the next episode.